What's going on, Meeting Gold listeners? It's Chris Battaglia, 416 Coffee, best fucking coffee in the world. Use the coupon code Meeting Gold to get 10% off your first order at 416 Coffee. Enjoy the show.
Racing has always been my be-all and end-all, the thing I think about every second of every day.
Let's finish straight. The West Tech team are absolutely overjoyed. So is Nelson Mason, and he is the winner.
But you never think of the speed. You know, you're just you're kind of like a dog chasing a squirrel.
Mason to the outside. This is what we like to see from Nelson Mason. Commitment and around the outside he goes. Lovely move there from Nelson Mason.
Wait, hold on a second. What pushed you to keep wanting to keep going?
You know, you're pissed, but more or less you're just a little bit heartbroken because this is like, there's only so many instances you have to rewrite history.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Meeting Gold Show. I want to thank you for joining us today. We have Nelson Mason on the show, and today we're going to be discussing all things racing.
Sounds good.
Mental challenges as well. Nelson, I want to ask you, first question, connect the dots for me. Tell me about childhood. What was the next step? The next step that brought you to where you are today?
Yeah, it's motorsport is an interesting sport, and it's always, everybody always asks, like, how'd you get started? And I was very, very fortunate to have pillars in my family around me that inspired me to chase the sport and chase the dream. And, that started with my grandparents. My grandmother raced go-karts. My grandfather built race cars. And then kind of coming from there, then my father built a race car and he raced that car. So we were involved in the sport, and then my brother was ahead of me, and he had gone and turned professional as I was coming through. But I just started in motocross. I was really young, and I had the opportunity. My parents allowed me to get a dirt bike and start racing in that.
At what age?
I was 4.5 at the time. I was not quite 5. And and then, so I wasn't able to race go-karts at the time. I wanted to race go-karts. I wanted to be on 4 wheels and get to Formula 1 was the goal. Right. But I could race dirt bikes at the time. I wasn't too young for that per se. You had to be 5. So we just had to lie a little bit on my first license, and we got there and raced that for 3 years, was successful in dirt bikes, but once I could make the switch to go-karts, I did. Made the switch to go-karts, and then, you start in a pretty basic championship. I was in the New York State Championship and won that in my first year. So then you kind of, like anything, you're like, well, I have to go to the next level then.
Do I keep going?
Yeah, and this is fun.
Wait, hold on a second. What pushed you to keep wanting to keep going?
Well, it's the love of competition, and you're doing something that even when you're a kid, like, you realize it's cool. You realize, the other kids aren't doing this, so this has got to be unique. And I played hockey and I played soccer and everything, but none of that gave me the experience that I had when I was, winning in go-karts or in a dirt bike. And, it's one of those things, as we kind of talked about. When I would play hockey, I was a goalie in hockey, and you have losses where you lose, 1-0. And here I stopped 55 shots tonight, and we lost 1-0. And, it's not really fair. I played a great game, and the rest of the team maybe didn't play a great game, but we still all lose together. And part of that would bother me, and I liked in racing where it would come down to me. If I performed the best, I would likely be the winner. And if I didn't perform the best, then I had to figure out how to be the best. And so there's that aspect, that almost selfish aspect that I really adored, because it really became proof in the pudding that it was on me and on what I put into it, and how well I did would be if I could go forward in the sport. So that love affair with that personal success, if you will, is what helped me to drive forward.
What kind of tolls does that take on you as a person to hold that level of responsibility and have, individuals like your grandfather or like your father or your mother look to you for success in competition?
Yeah, you're actually bang on. Like it is a little bit messy with the mind, because when you don't succeed, it's always nice to, I guess, have that barrier of you can kind of pin it on somebody else, or we didn't play well as a team together, and you don't always have to be looking in the mirror. And with racing, it's actually the opposite. Like, things can go wrong, the car can break. There's so many unknowns that happen in a race that could take a race away as to why you didn't win. But at the end of the day, you only have yourself. So even when the car fails, you look in the mirror and you go, well, what did I do to make the car fail? Versus, why did the car fail? Mm-hmm. And you're constantly looking into yourself, and it is tasking, and it is something that I think a lot of drivers that fall off or don't continue to make it up through the ladder, that is one of the big things, is they want something to blame. They want a fallback. They want a safety net.
Did you ever struggle with that level of responsibility? Like, what kind of tolls did that take on you behind the scenes that you didn't really let on to anybody else?
Truthfully, like I went through bouts of depression. You do, because there's times where you're simply not in the best car on the track. Your equipment isn't as good as the equipment you're competing against. But at the end of the day, the people who are writing the headlines don't care about that. They just say, you finished 12th and he finished first, so therefore he's better and you're worse. And even though you know the ins and outs, and maybe the people around you in the team know the ins and outs, drastically the sponsors don't know the ins and outs, and the people who promote you don't know the ins and outs. So it's just, you either win or you don't win. And so it's very, very tough, and it's very, very mentally tasking. But on the flip side of it, I think I was very fortunate I was very fortunate with those around me, with my brother having experienced that, and my father understanding the sport, and just the family and friends that I had around me. I was very lucky where I was able to disconnect without disconnecting. Racing has always been my be-all and end-all, the thing I think about every second of every day. But when I step outside of the car, I can joke around, and I'm just this more, let's say, well, people know me, probably don't say I'm joyous, but more joyous personality. Whereas when I'm inside the car, I'm kind of a killer, and I'm kind of a killer on myself. Every single thing I do, whether I win or whether I don't win, I'm critiquing myself every second. And I'm able to kind of have, I guess, that split personality, which allowed me to fight through any sort of mental holdbacks and continue to push myself and strive to find, how do I get better again? And okay, yeah, we won this championship. Now we're moving up to a new class.
Ladies and gentlemen, I just want to take a quick break from our show to say a massive thank you and a big shout out to one of our amazing sponsors, Dave DiStefano. Dave is a mortgage broker with over 13 years in the business, and Dave has a great rapport with the network of lenders, including big banks, credit unions, trust companies, financial institutions, and private funds. He will work on your behalf to help you find the best mortgage with the most agreeable terms and the lowest interest rate. After meeting Dave many times and having great discussions with him, he provides a level of confidence and comfort in knowing that he is going to take care of you. If you want to reach out to Dave, you can find his office on 6293 Thoroldstone Road in Niagara Falls. For more information or to make an appointment for any of your mortgage needs, call 905-933-1090. That's 905-933-1090. And thanks for listening. Back to the show. I love that you said, critiquing yourself and having a split. But let me ask you this, and maybe, hopefully it encourages you to think about this and see how your story unfolds as you get older and as you get better and better at racing. How did critiquing yourself all the time, because I know you do, we've watched you race, it's you or it's you. That's the only person you're going to blame, but it's also the only person you're going to blame for the win. And I think that's the killer personality that you need to be in a sport where there's only 20 people in the entire world that get to race those cars. What was the most humbling experience you received in racing that comes to mind?
I mean, there's a few. In all fairness, the people that I look up to the most, again, were those who I had very close around me. So my brother, for sure, is my be-all and end-all role model of my entire life. And, you know, when he compliments the drive, I could finish 18th. I could have parked it in the wall, big crash, stupid mistake. Doesn't matter. If he says that I had a good drive, then for me, that's something that I look inwards and I'm just like, man, like we've actually established ourselves, you know. But you get some big wins and things like that, and you get to look around. I think in Formula 3, I nearly won the European Championship, and I had an amazing season, and we won a lot of races. And you look around at the drivers that you're competing against, and these are 30 of the top junior drivers in the world facing off in one championship, and it's like so cutthroat. You would have no idea, because at the end of the day, there's nowhere to go. And either you succeed or you fail, and that's it, you know. And everything's a career maker, and everybody's earned their spot into this point, but how do they go forward again? And when you win some big races against the likes of the drivers you're looking at there, and my teammate was Ed Jones, who was, I think 2 years later, was the Indy 500 Rookie of the Year. And, you know, the names were stacked. And I think Alex Palou raced as well, and he's the IndyCar champion. You know, so the people you're racing against, you're looking around and you're going, man, like, yeah, I came in and I didn't think that I could succeed. Everybody told me, sure, you can succeed. Everybody wants to succeed. But you never really know until you do it. And then once you do it, you're like, well, now what's next?
Did you struggle? Because what I see is, you know, every time you win a race, you gain more confidence, right? But when you lose a race, confidence might take a hit. Did you ever struggle within your personal life dealing with self-confidence?
I wouldn't say I did, only because my personal life is so... It sounds weird and odd to say, but my personal life is so secondary to me. You know, to me, my number one importance is racing and my success in racing. It's a very selfish outlook, I know, and it sounds crazy, but genuinely, I'm not that selfish outside of racing. But once I'm inside the car, I'm there to take everything. And if I have a 10-second lead, I want a 12-second lead. And if I've just passed for the lead, I want to make sure that everybody's completely embarrassed to finish behind me. You know, like it's a wild thing. Whereas outside of racing, I'm completely the opposite. I like to be very generous, and I don't want any praise, and I don't want any of that. So it's an interesting thing. But in my personal life, because I was so, I guess, confident or let's say happy with the talent I was building and where I was going in my professional career, that in my personal life I've always just kind of been, you know, okay with, and it is what it is. Mm-hmm. and I don't stress or I stress a lot, but I don't worry too much about who I am as a person, because for me, my important person is the guy who drives the race car.
Is racing you? Do you define yourself with racing?
I do, absolutely. Yeah.
Is that a positive or negative thing in your mind?
I would say it's probably in my mind, it's a positive thing. I think being able to do the split personality and look at it from the outside, I would say it's absolutely a negative thing, you know, because it will just eat you up. I mean, the sport is one of those sports that it's nearly impossible to ever be the greatest. And you know, and I've missed maybe the opportunities that I needed to not miss, or opportunities haven't presented themselves, whatever, where I won't be labeled the greatest. So I'm coming to terms with that, of course. But but you know, for me, it is, and it's a wild thing, but it is like why I eat, sleep, breathe. It's everything. And yeah, but at the same point, I see it from the outside. I see that there's things that I can do outside of, let's say, my direct career in creating a race team or creating a way for talent to kind of fuel into the sport that I can do that's helpful. That's not just me. It's more the opposite.
So at what point did you take us a little bit, let's take a step back. I want to talk about you now engaging in a professional career, when this became a realization that this could be something more. I would compare it to somebody running a business and they're making some good money as a side hobby. And then they look at it and say, maybe I have potential to really take this to the next level. At what point were you at in your in your career of racing? Maybe it wasn't a career just yet, but at what point did you say to yourself, or did your parents say, or did you commit to trying professional?
I would say I was about 13 or 14 and in karts, in a very, very competitive level of karts. Jesse, my brother had just gone over to Europe at that point and was very successful over there. And, you know, for me, I felt he was always the best race car driver I had ever seen. So I was just trying to embody that. And so really it was when I was 14, as the level of karts, like, it sounds crazy that it's go-karts, but they're called shifter karts. It's a 6-speed manual shifter kart that goes like 120 miles an hour on a go-kart track. And they're just mental. Like, they're just completely mental.
Can I just quick ask, who did you race against?
So, I mean, you can kind of name it. One of the biggest names would probably be Michael Schumacher, because he would test in go-karts, and he owned a go-kart track. And so, in all fairness, I didn't race directly against him because he came back to race in the category the year after I had finished. But these, like, F1 drivers would come around, so I raced against Vincentonio Liuzzi, who was a Formula 1 driver at the time. He was still racing karts as well. And you're racing at such a level, but you're 15. You're like, you don't understand it, you know, but everybody at that age or at that level, like, where, you know, we're kind of racing for go-kart factory teams. So I was just racing for the manufacturer. So I was just a factory driver. I was just a hired gun, if you will. And, so I raced against Graham Rahal, who's an IndyCar driver. He and I raced directly through the years, and you're just racing at such a level that it is a profession. You're not necessarily being paid professional money, but you are literally training every day. Like, at 14 years of age, I'm in the gym every day, you know, before and after school, whatever, working out, trying to figure out how, you know, at the next track, what do we need to do for the setup of the karts and things like that. And that was really it. That was really a telltale sign where it was like, I had stopped hockey, I had stopped soccer, and I was just like, this is what we're doing. And, you know, Christmas, we would have a race. Like, I think it was December 27th, our race was in Florida. You know, you just race through the holidays, and that was life.
So with all of this being racing, with your life being racing, like you mentioned, I think it's fantastic. I think you're chasing something that you truly are passionate about. What effect, because as I've slowly started to get older and realize what you have to do to get to where you want to be and the sacrifices that you have to make, you kind of find yourself asking sometimes, was it worth it, or is it worth it? Imposter syndrome begins to set in. Did you ever experience that?
First off, I don't think you can use the older card just yet.
I don't think so. I think I got to get like 5 more years on me.
I think like 10. I think 10 more years, maybe. Zero regrets. Because at the end of the day, I have, I guess, maybe a skewed view on it, but, you know, we can all do things where, like I always say, it's very easy to earn money. Like, it really is. You can get a job and it doesn't have to be anything special, and then you make money, and then that's great. And then you buy a house, okay, and then we sell that house, we make a little bit more profit on it, and et cetera, et cetera. It's very easy to get by in life in a general sense of it. And everybody's doing it. 7.5 billion people are doing it on this planet right now. And, billions have done it before us, where they just, okay, we're here for 90 years, so let's just do them as boring as possible, which, genuinely a lot of us are doing. And that's where I'm not too concerned. I'm not too concerned about the money. I'm not too concerned about anything else, because, you can't take it with you. But what you can do is just try to live, really try to live and really try to push yourself and become more and more and more. And that's what I feel with chasing the passion, is that there's nothing I would rather be doing. And, I would happily sleep in a bus shelter if it meant that I got to compete one more day versus be comfortable not competing.
Did you ever have a level of doubt in your ability to make it to F1?
1,000%. 1,000%, yes. And
was it an ongoing thought?
Always. And, it's I think you need a level of doubt. And I guarantee that even guys like Lewis Hamilton, when they hop in the car, they have a level of doubt. And I think the athletes that succeed the most in their sports doubt themselves constantly. And it's not letting anybody else know that you're doubting yourself, but that's the way that you continue to push and continue to, there's a reason that Steph Curry is out practicing every day, and that Lewis Hamilton is constantly practicing, and everybody's trying to get better, because you can't be stagnant. And there's so much talent out there nowadays that you really can't be stagnant, and you can't be comfortable with yourself. So you have to become comfortable with being uncomfortable. So I always pushed myself. I always doubted myself. And I would doubt myself even after a result that we never believed was possible. We'd get that result, and I'd go right back to going, well, all these things could have gone wrong, which took that away. So we got lucky that we got that result. So this is what I got to do better next time.
Did you find that because you had that small level of doubt, was that influenced by anybody else, or was it just you?
No, I think, again, I was very, as I said, I was very fortunate with who I had around me. And they whether they doubted me or didn't doubt me, they never let on that there was any lack of confidence from them. So I think that always helped. That allowed me to put more pressure on myself without the penalty of the pressure, if you will. I was able to be harder on myself, and they would pick me back up. And therefore, being harder on myself, I could see what I did and didn't do wrong. They would pick me up so that I wasn't necessarily affected by what I did wrong.
Right. And, okay, now I have a follow-up question to that. Because you mentioned off camera, I asked you, I said, do you like relying on other people? And as a racer, you assume full responsibility of everything that happens, right? You assume responsibility of the win, but you also assume responsibility of the lose. And more or less times, even in F1, there's more losses than there are wins. There's
Absolutely.
one winner, right? So when you started to grow and started to develop in F1 or in, Formula cars, fast cars, right? Did you find yourself only wanting to rely on yourself, or did you find yourself maybe searching for options to rely on other people to just give them some responsibility because maybe it felt like too much?
No, I think anything to do with my performance, I am solely relying on myself. Now, I lean on those pillars that I have around me. I lean on my father. I lean on my brother. I want their opinion. But it's one of those things, it's either they're agreeing with what I'm already thinking, or they don't agree with what I'm already thinking, and I continue thinking what I thought. Right. And it's, it's just one of those things that, it sounds so odd, but it would just be the way I would look at things. And if they agreed with it, great. Then I knew I was on the right track. Yeah. And if they didn't agree with it, I would probably get frustrated with them and say that, they weren't paying attention enough. And I would still kind of be bullheaded in my approach. But I would still, even when I'm in the car, I would then kind of think back to those conversations and then maybe leverage what they were trying to say versus what I was thinking or what have you. So whenever I'm racing and I'm at the track, and a lot of times I was in Europe and they were here, so I would just be on Zoom or Skype or whatever with them, and and they're looking at the times and they see the times from practice or qualifying, and they're saying, oh, well, maybe try this or maybe try that. I'm very difficult to talk to because I'm like, well, I'm here and you don't understand, so therefore forget it. But in all fairness, I am taking it on board. It's just I'm like, I have on a race weekend, I have this like hard shell. I'm not talking to anybody. I don't want to do media interviews. I don't want to talk to the other drivers. I'm like very closed off because you're just trying to extract every single ounce of ability that you have. And I always believed like if I joked or laughed or whatever, maybe it would make somebody think that I wasn't taking it seriously enough. Maybe one of my mechanics wouldn't think that. Then maybe they don't take, one of their jobs as seriously, and then it just has like a backwards effect. So I'd try to always keep my team around me like very focused on the job at hand. And I was very, very particular about, their job, being serious, talking to them like professionally all the time, joking after the race, 1,000%, let's celebrate. But during the weekend, and I would just be really cold and not necessarily difficult to work at, but just like so insanely focused that I didn't want any outside conversation to take away my focus.
How did you find that influenced your work life?
Because
I would consider it the same things.
Like, you mean my work life outside of racing?
Yeah.
I'm like completely a different person. Completely a different person. Motorsport, again, is just so insanely cutthroat that if anyone, sponsors, team managers, anyone outside of you, the driver, sees even the smallest of weaknesses, it will just get exploited massively. And it'll just get dived into, and everybody will just try to build it up. I can go back to a Formula One analogy with like Lewis Hamilton and Fernando Alonso. Everybody outside of Lewis and Fernando believe they hate each other and they can't be on track together and they can't be in the same room together and whatever, because they were teammates and they had a really difficult season with each other. But in reality, they're two guys that respect each other more than anything. But it's just outside of it, this like weakness gets exploited.
Yeah.
So with racing, and with motorsport, especially in Europe, it's so insanely cutthroat that you really have to be kind of a robot, but kind of like a very aggressively set robot, and just like almost like you're eating a meal in prison, like just super protective over everything that is you. And this is my nest egg, and nobody can touch it. Right. Whereas outside of it and in work in general, and I'm quite laid back and quite relaxed because it's not racing, and
Interesting.
it's my life isn't on the line for this, so I'm chill about it.
So the farthest point you made it in racing, what was it?
So I made it to what was called, at the time, it was 2017, it was called World Series. So at the time, there was GP2 and World Series. Those two formed together in 2018 to create Formula 2. World Series at the time was it was called World Series by Renault, and it was the number one feeder into the Formula 1 of drivers, more so than GP2. And but GP2 had a better business model, and they amalgamated and became Formula 2, and now, so you can say that I was racing F2 at the time. But and it was insanely competitive. So insanely competitive that's when I really began to notice, let's say, mental factors outside of the car would have drastic effects on performance.
What was your biggest weakness with mental strain when racing F2?
My biggest weakness, in all fairness, what happened, we came in, I had compressed my spine at the end of 2014. So I was a Mercedes driver at the time. I was racing for Force India's junior team in GP3.
Which is a straight up feed to F1.
Yeah, exactly. And so I compressed my spine in Abu Dhabi, last race of the season, and I was out for 2015. I had gotten kind of dropped off the Mercedes driver program and everything else, and kind of dropped by everybody else. We didn't have sponsorship for 2016, and everything kind of just came to a halt, a grinding halt. Going into, or at the beginning of 2017, a team manager that I had raced against, or competed against, competed against his team, he called me up out of the blue and he said, look, our drivers are not very good. We're going into the season. We have not had any good results. We believe that the team is strong. We want you to just come over, do some testing for us to kind of get the car right. And then when the drivers come in with their sponsors, then, you know, you'll go back to Canada or whatever. So I went over. I kind of jumped at the opportunity because if I did well, maybe they'd keep me on. Of
course. There's any opportunity there.
Yeah, absolutely. And testing went really, really well. I was a straight up rookie in the championship. And we went to Silverstone with no real expectation. And then we went from no real expectation to I set a new lap record, and it was looking like this was going to be our first win of the season. I ended up getting taken out from what would have been the first win, and first win for a rookie in like 5 years. So it was like a huge deal.
Oh, boy.
And
does that suck to get taken out like that?
It does. Yeah, for sure. Because
like, are you pissed? Are you sad? Are you...
You're more or less flabbergasted. You know, you're working your way, how it played out. Like there was just different pit strategy, and I'd pit early because we were really fast, but we were kind of stuck in traffic. And I pit early, and I threw down some bonsai laps. And then when everybody else started to cycle through the pits, I was, you know, the net leader, if you will. And one of the guys that had just come out of the pits, he was on cold tires. I made a pass around the outside, which was a completely normal pass at that time. And he just threw it into the corner too deep and washed out and drove into the side of me and took both cars out. But, you know, you're pissed, but more or less you're just a little bit heartbroken because this is like, there's only so many instances you have to rewrite history, you know, and this was one of those instances. And, you know, the last rookie to win, in like at that level was like the Lewis Hamiltons. So
do you ever think what could have been?
Well, of course you think what could have been. But,
what could have been?
Well, I mean, maybe nothing, right? Maybe nothing. Maybe it wouldn't have meant anything. Or maybe it would have been that one thing that convinced just somebody else to come on board to keep it going. Because what happened after that was, and where I was getting to was our sponsor at the time, that was like keeping me afloat, and like Mercedes, we were in conversation with Mercedes that like they would keep tabs on us, and if we did end up winning the rookie season, then, you know, another season was on the cards. If we ended up winning the outright championship, then they would just likely move us to a test roll of Formula One or whatever it be. So all of that, you're looking at it like this is my opportunity. Mm-hmm. Then the sponsor stopped paying, so then the team had no money. And the team still wanted to race because they're competitive too, and they need to pay for the car to run, and cars are crazy expensive to run. So then I'm trying to, every day before the races, I'm trying to call back to Canada, trying to find out where the checks are, why I haven't been paid, but why hasn't the team been paid? And then so I'm so worried about that and so focused on that I'm now not spending time going through data and not trying to figure out how to get better. And our results just started to fall off. And so you look at like the mental aspect of it and just how damaging that was, because I was thinking like, man, I am, you know, I am the second coming of something. I am deserving of this, and I have worked for this, and I have this family legacy behind me, and all the cards are in order, and all the balls are in the right way. You know, everything's lined up perfectly, and now it's falling apart, and I can't stop it from falling apart. So it's mentally really, really difficult. And that's where I did like hit depression after that year, because it was just like I had gotten closer than we ever believed we could. But then once you like have that taste and you've succeeded at that taste. So it shows that maybe you should be making the next step. And then it just, the house of cards starts to fall apart and you just can't stop it.
What's that like? Like that feeling, that emotion, that feeling, because you mentioned that you love having all the responsibility on you. But when in a sport that requires responsibility from other individuals, at least financially, and you don't get that, does that ever make you, I guess you said you felt depressed. I guess, what was that emotion like dealing with that?
Yeah.
It was outside of your control.
I was of course it's outside of your control, but it's that's only an excuse that you can use, right? So I was lucky with the people I had around me, and there was lots of benefits to coming home. I had been in Europe for a long time, and I didn't necessarily love Europe. I was just there because that's where you got to be for racing, right? So there was aspects I had here. I had my dogs here, which I missed them. I was missing them like 8 months of the year. But no, so you have aspects that will hold you up and keep you going. But, on the flip side of it, I was depressed because I believed for almost the first time ever, I believed that maybe I did have
a shot,
what it took, because I never wanted to make it to Formula One just to say I was a Formula One driver. I didn't care about that at all. What I cared about was I want to be like the greatest. I want to be the greatest at every aspect of the sport. And, and that was really, now I was competing at such a level against talents that were just insanely rated, that I believed that now I have the tools in the toolbox to be good enough in F1 to succeed. And, and so when that got stripped away, of course, I was like, this is not fair, and this is terrible, and this sport is just not good. It's too much toxicity, and it's just too poisonous. And everybody from the outside saying I'm not good enough, when really I'm having to deal with all of these things while trying to perform at my highest level. It's just, nobody knows the full story. And now how do I explain that maybe I was good enough, but now I just sound like I'm somebody saying I'm good enough when I was never really that case. But on the flip side of it, I was never naive to it. I knew that I needed the sponsorship, and I knew that that was the case. And I had missed so many opportunities because we just didn't have the funding for me to do it. So I had done a brilliant job at getting to where we got on the fact that I really never had any money to move forward to that point anyway. So, you have to look at it. Sometimes you do have to look at it glass half full, glass half empty. Should I have ever, I never had the money to be in World Series, but I was in World Series. So maybe that is something to take home with me.
I think it's a testament to your character to be able to look at the positive in something that, your dream was crushed, right? How did you find yourself adapting after the life of realizing it's kind of over? Or did you never really adapt?
No, yeah, and it's never over. Yeah, I'm waiting for Mercedes to call me tomorrow. But no, in reality, it took some time, and we had some family things here. My mother was sick, and she was such a huge part of my career and huge part of our lives. So there was other things to take solace in. That it was nice to be home, and I had like I say, I had a real life here still, even though I was always in Europe. But yeah, you just kind of roll with it. And then I was like, well, maybe that career is done. Maybe I can move on from it. And truth be known, I absolutely cannot move on from it. And that's where I really started to put my head down. Well, if I'm not going to race in Formula One, I'm not going to race at the pinnacle, then realistically, I want to create an avenue where I can bring talent up through motorsport and do what we're doing now, and create this thing where I can do it better than how people are doing it. I've seen all of the bad.
Take on that responsibility.
Yeah, I've seen all the bad. I've seen all that. Teams should be searching for the sponsorship, not the drivers, and all of this. And then there needs to be a way to actually give sponsors the ROI, and make them partners, not make them sponsors and everything else. So I could see all the bad and what I could change about it and what I could control. And like we talked about before, just not being responsible on somebody else, but controlling the destiny versus just hoping for it.
How did your goals shift as you got out of this and now you want to help other individuals? But as you were living in it, what were your goals like other than trying to be the number one in the world F1 driver?
No, I mean, that was the only goal. And that's I just wanted to, I shouldn't say that. That was the main goal. The other goal was really just to do right by my family. They had put so much, and I'm not just talking my brother and my father and my grandfather and my grandmother and my mom, but, my aunts and uncles and cousins, like everybody has always been so insanely supportive that I never felt I deserved any of that. I was the dud in the Mason family. Like, Jesse's brilliant. My father's brilliant. My mother was brilliant. All my cousins are brilliant in all of the aspects of life that they do. And I was just kind of like, I was boring. I had one thing, and and there was no real guarantee that the chances that you make it as a Formula One driver are like 1 in a billion. So in reality, like I didn't think that I deserved kind of all of the fanfare and support from my family that I got. So I just kind of always wanted to make them proud and put let's say the family name on the stage and wave the Canadian flag at all the big international events, which we got to do. And that was really a big thing that I got to accomplish.
Let's have some fun and talk about racing more specifically. Because I want to take a break before I ask you the last series of questions about Life Now and what you're doing now. But I wanted to ask you, what's it like driving 300 kilometers an hour? Actually, more.
Yeah, 340 I think is like the top speed for an F2 car. You don't think about it. Like, we don't have a speedometer on the dash or anything. We have 140 pages of information that we go through, and we're making changes and we're making differential changes and stuff at that speed. But you never think of the speed. You're just you're kind of like a dog chasing a squirrel. You're just focused on the job at hand, and you're not really focused about how fast you're running or anything like that. So when you're like Monza is where I think we hit our highest speed, and you're just going down the straight and you're just okay. Like, up ahead, I see my braking marker is at 100 meters or 95 meters.
There's a braking marker? There's a pylon? Or
yeah, so they'll have like for all the Formula One events, you have like markers on either on the fence or on the side of the track, and it'll be 50 meters, 100 meters, 150 meters, 200 meters. So you have your marker, and that's kind of your braking point, if you will. But like, you're modulating that accordingly. So if I'm braking at 75 meters, there's no marker for it, but maybe there's, a rubber mark on the track that I can utilize or something like that. So you're looking like 150 meters down the road because the cars are going so quick, but you're never thinking of your speed. You're just like, okay, I got to hit my marker, and I got to hit my apex, and I got to carry the speed through, and I got to make sure that, I've got the brake bias in the right set, or I've got the differential at the right set, and you're just focused on so many other things. Or when there's cars around you, I have to make sure that he doesn't have a run on me, or that he won't be able to take a look on me or anything like that. You're truly at war, and you're just not worried about it.
So many people think that racing is just driving and turning, and me included, until I watched the Drive to Survive series. Mm-hmm. And I was obsessed with it. And I realized how much actually gets influenced in a race other than just pressing the gas and the brake.
Yeah, it's wild. And it's wild. Like, the cars are super advanced, so it's wild what you can do with them. But at the same point, like, it is wild. Like, for me, I love battle, and I love like making overtakes, making passes, and and out strategizing the other drivers and tricking the other drivers. That's something that I'm pretty good at, and I love the most about the driving aspect or the competing aspect. And you really do use your car as a weapon. You really do. Like, you throw yourself into situations where the other driver has to decide whether you are going to crash or whether he's going to let you take the position. But you put it into a position where it's really, there's no other decision. It's not like you both make it through the corner side by each. You throw yourself into a position where you're like, it's one and done. And
because everybody's got balls at that level.
Everybody's got balls, and everybody wants to make the step. Everybody's had the same story that I have, and has their family on the line and needs to risk this in order to make the next step.
Yeah.
And you just have to judge your situation and go, is this guy actually willing to risk it, or is he a little bit all talk? And yeah, that's the part I love the most about it.
Are there any racing moments or things you experienced while racing that just always have a flashback to? Certain situations, stories, different drivers, turns?
Yeah, all of the above. There's so much that really stands out, and there's so many moments where, you're just like, now I look back at them and I'm like, man, I was nuts. Like, how'd I even accomplish that? But yeah, there's plenty of moments, and plenty of drivers who were, absolute joys to race against. Guys that were just like super competitive and super strong and super crazy, super fast, and yet clean. Like I could battle them and I wouldn't crash, or vice versa. So and then same, all the moments that you travel to, all the tracks that you travel to, everything that you get to experience, and the travel in between the races. I think in 2013, I did like 76 flights in Europe, just between testing and races and whatever else. So all of it is really, it builds to the life that is. But I would say my peak ever moment, or my peak ever core memory, let's say, was in Spain in 2013 in Formula 3, where we had won the first race of the season. We crashed out of the second race. We crashed out of the third race. And it was just like our championship went from, okay, we might be the championship favorite, to it just unraveled. And going into Spain, it was a doubleheader weekend, and nobody thought that, or everybody had kind of written us off. Qualified on pole for the first race, won the first race. Nobody had ever won two races in the same weekend. We qualified second for the second race, and we just like laid an absolute smackdown on everybody and like won the race by a huge amount. And it was just one of those things like where everybody, like in Europe, obviously there's a lot of media, and there's a lot of media in the pits, and everybody had written us off, and like the last two weekends, like nobody was interviewing me because this Canadian's done, and like he's like 10th in the championship, he's nobody. And then after that, we set fastest lap in both races, got the point for pole position, won both races, and all of a sudden we were like a championship contender again. Yeah. And it just like completely flipped it on its head. And it was just one of those things where it was like, like you just want to like swear at everybody. Like,
yeah.
F and A.
F and A. Prove people wrong.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so Nelson, as we begin to close off, I want to ask you, what are you doing now?
So now we have a two-car dirt team that races at Merrittville and races all through the U.S. and Canada. And they're dirt modifieds, which is just crazy, and a completely
new world,
bass-ackwards new world to me. And I love it because now it's actually I'm actually having to learn over again. There's so much I have to learn. My teammate is a young gun from Fenwick, who's his family, like he's a third generation racer. I'm a third generation racer. He's an absolute great guy, super talented, really likely to be the next big thing in the dirt world, and something where I'm really inspired to support him and watch him grow and try to pass on any knowledge I have, since He's quite a bit younger than me, but and just running this team and now going to try to keep searching for talent, keep bringing talent through the sport, growing the team as well. But yeah, so we just finished our first season, and it was awesome. We got 4 wins. It was great. Everybody was really stoked, and I think we surprised a lot of people.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, it's genuinely fun. It's genuinely fun competing in something where everybody is probably more skilled at it than I am because I'm so new to it, and having to learn and having to figure out how to win again and having to figure out how to out-strategize the other drivers. And I think there's a lot. I think we surprised a lot of people with just maybe how crazy I am. But yeah, it's a blast. And it's being one of those things with the sport is you're surrounded by really great people. Again, we have my family, we have my teammate Taylor and his family, and it's absolutely a blast. Like it really, I wouldn't say reignited the passion because it's never gone away, but it's really just brought the inspiration full circle.
Yeah, yeah. Do you feel that there is a want or need to get into asphalt racing again? Because you've grown up with asphalt racing all your life, and now you're going to, and I remember filming this with you, but totally new world. Do you want to stay in that world, or do you want to continue to grow into something that you once chased your dreams in?
You know what? It's really interesting because I would always say I want to get back to asphalt. Like, obviously that's where my comfort zone is. And that's where I think my skill set has the most punch, but at the same point, I love this dirt world now. I love how little I know about it and how much I have to grow for that. Mm-hmm. So I love that I have to now add so many more tools to my driving toolbox.
Like the challenge or the idea that you have to problem solve all the time.
Yeah, the challenge for sure. Because just going into asphalt racing, like if there's a problem, I know the solution. I've seen it a million times over, so I know it. Whereas now I don't, and I have to find out how to find that solution and figure everything out again. But at the same point, like, it's crazy competitive in dirt, and there is a Formula One of the dirt world, which is World of Outlaws sprint cars, which are just crazy, crazy cars. And so I'm fully driven to get to there.
There's like an F1 for dirt.
Absolutely. And they're nuts. They're like 900 horsepower, 1,000-pound cars that are just wacko with full downforce and everything. And they're just crazy.
Oh my God.
So that's the push I'm doing. So we're trying to actually expand to 2 sprint cars for 2023.
Interesting.
And that's the big push. We're bringing partners on right now, but that's just keep expanding and keep growing, build my toolbox and build the talent pool coming from Niagara.
Nelson, where can people find you if they want to reach out?
So on social media, we have Mace Race Motorsport has at Mace Race Motorsport is the Instagram, and then I have my own Instagram at NelsonMason35 and NelsonMason.com. But just on social.
Okay, and the last question of the episode here, I want to start asking guests, what's a question you have for the next guest?
Whew, buddy. Let me see.
Tough one, right?
I would say question for the next guest is, where does the inspiration go from here?
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds like that's similar to your story.
Yeah, absolutely.
Finding new inspirations and not just dwelling on past.
I have a question for you, though.
Hit me.
Okay.
Oh, we're changing things up here. Go for it.
What will it take to get you in a race car on dirt this year?
Oh, my God. What would it take?
Yeah.
Sticking a GoPro in the car and recording the whole thing.
Let's go.
That would be incredible.
See you in the spring.
I'm totally in for that. All
right.
We'll have to make a video out of that. That would be, oh my God.
Yeah, we will have to do some lessons. I saw the go-karts, so.
That would be incredible.
We'll have to do some lessons for you.
Yeah.
Some driver coaching.
I would love to hit the go-karts, those Indy go-karts with you in Hamilton.
Yeah, no, well, now we're going to get you on dirt.
Yeah, I love it. I'll throw some in your face.
All right.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for watching and listening to the Meeting Gold Show. I want to thank you for joining us today. And if you're ever in the market for Audis, Nelson didn't really touch on that today, but I didn't think we had to.
No.
But if you're ever in the market for Audis, reach out to Nelson. He's got a couple goodies.
All right. Thank you.
He'll be happy to service you guys. We'll see you later, and we'll see you in the next episode. Bye.